history with cars or motorcycles, anything automotive, mechanical. It sounds stupid, but it dates back to birth. My dad was always into like off-road and sand rails and boats and motorcycles. I've always been surrounded by it. Never played sports. No team sports, nothing like that. It's always been cars and motorcycles. I think I was about 11. That's when I knew, and I just dedicated myself to working and saving money because I knew I wanted a hot rod. That's all I thought about. And I was 14. I'd saved up about $1,500 or $1,600, and I bought a 1940 Willys pickup. All steel, 2 complete front clips, center section, fenders, hood, stock chassis, everything. I paid $950 for it. But man, I went to school and I told all the other kids in class and my buddies, like, man, I bought a car this weekend. And everybody was excited, like, man, you're 14 years old and bought a car. All my buddies, we all rode bicycles, home from school back over to my parents' house, opened the garage door. Everybody's just crying, laughing. It's like, you bought what? I mean, it was this rusty Hulk. It absolutely crushed me because in my mind's eye, I could see this thing all done. And everybody laughed at me and thought I'm the dumbest human alive to throw away $950 on that car. But 2 years and 2 days later, I proved him wrong. All right, so welcome to the shop. Real quick shop tour, cars we got, projects going on. 1963 Buick Riviera 425 car. Kind of a concept vehicle where we're doing it very much like Bill Mitchell. So there's a lot of subtle custom work done to it. And it's been the process over about 4 years right now. Hopefully going to paint soon. 1956 Ford F100 pickup truck. It has a Hillborn injected Holly Sniper fuel injection system, bitchin' truck, all steel, mild chop, kind of a pro touring custom, etc. 1953 Porsche. This is a pre-A. Before they called them a 356. So this is a bent window. We're actually doing this as kind of a hot rod. We're actually doing a Polo motor in it, which was based on a 914. So it can be a street, track, and strip car. So we do everything from complete builds and such to a shave and a haircut. Like this car here, 33 Ford, built by Copus and his buddies in the Throttlers. It's a home build, and they get so far, and he got to the point where he couldn't figure out how to actually make the clutch function and do what it needs to do, so that's where we take over. The mid-1980s, and I thought I was pretty much a standalone. I had a couple friends and into off-road and motorcycles, and then they had the guys that did the Volkswagen Bugs, Mini trucks were huge, and I didn't really identify with any of them. It wasn't until I started hanging out with guys, like the car clubs like the Shifters, Choppers, or them, or the Road Rebels. Guys that had Harleys and hot rods and, coupes and roadsters and old Cadillac motors and nail heads. And wow, I kind of found somebody, or at least a group, I didn't know they existed. That little 34 Ford truck has been an idea in my mind since I was probably in junior high or high school. Just drawing pictures, just some low slung, dry lakes racer. And had I known just how popular that car would become, I probably would have done a better job. It was an exercise of an idea, and it's one of those accident cars that you never planned. You could, go out and try and build, an AMBR car. Maybe you win. And then in a year, oh, who owns that car? Where'd it go? What happened to it? That little truck, it made such an impact on the world, and it really kind of, and again, it was an accident, no intention. It changed hot rodding. There was the traditional stuff, but that it was a kind of a deviation from the traditionals, far away from the billet, but it kind of took it down a new path. And it kind of gave like our generation our own voice. And a lot of people started gravitating towards that. I don't know if that truck was the first. I don't think it was. I think it was one of the first, but absolutely one of the most famous that came out of it. So let's take a step back in time. About 18 years ago, when I was introduced to Baileigh Industrial Tools, and we've done a lot together, and I've been really impressed with the machinery and the service. You know, right here, here's one of our tools we use, quite a bit. We do so much sheet metal work. You know, this is a bead roller with many different dies. About 95% of the machinery we have is Baileigh. You know, I've got a slip roll here. This is our power slip roll for curving sheet metal. We do predominantly all steel cars or aluminum cars, so that's why we have to have our stomp shear for shearing sheet metal. Well, then you got to be able to break it and form it. So this is a finger break. So each one of these are individual, and you can move them all together, or you can actually use it so you can make like a box or a pan break out of it as well. Shrinker and stretcher. I've got two of them, because one, you can have just one, but then you got to flip dies. Oh, I shrunk it too much. Now I got to flip the dies to stretch it back, whatever it might be. I just got one set up for shrinking, and I got one set up for stretching. But this is the MH19 power hammer. Also has a side attachment for planishing, doing lighter, smaller gauge work. But the power hammer side, with all the different dies and such, it's got a lot more power. You can move a lot more metal, heavier gauge, faster, and with a lot of control. Of course, you need an English wheel for shaping. We do a lot of like roof inserts, deck lids, hoods, etc. You know, and here's another small tool that's just absolutely indispensable. This is called a throatless shear. Got this from Baileigh. You can actually cut, shape, move, different shapes. Cuts it nice and easy. And we do light machine work as well. So a vertical mill such as this is, again, absolutely indispensable. You can see our lathe here has some miles on it. We use our equipment. Love this machine. Ooh, now here's my bandsaw. I don't know how we could do our jobs without any of them. I mean, every single one of them. And just how often we use them, the miles we put on these machines. You know, if it sucked, I'd tell you it sucked. Of course, the drill press, variable speed, high range, low range, tapping abilities, 30-ton hydraulic press, you know, for pressing stuff, bearings, axles. So over here in this corner, we keep these machines by the door as we're building roll cages and doing chassis work. Because they're 110, we can roll them right outside the shop door here, plug into the wall, got a long piece of tubing as we're building a roll bar, etc., or notching it. Again, you can see just how much we use these machines and how much we rely on them. Baileigh's social media, it's so huge. They reach so many people. And you find all these guys that might be in some little town, you know, that nobody's ever heard of. Well, they're into building their cars and metal shaping too. So the social media has really reached a lot of different people that normally wouldn't be in these forums or see any of this. And it kind of makes them relevant and cool. To be a metal shaper and have the Baileigh tools and be on the social media is kind of an achievement. It's really cool. But Shane actually did a really good job really promoting all the social media and making Baileigh relevant. I mean, Baileigh was, you know, a relatively new company, hadn't been around. Oh gosh, I want to say it was mid-90s is when the company was started. So is the new kid on the block. 95, 96 is when I was introduced to Pete Shaporis. Of course, I knew who he was. And this is before the resurgence or the revival of SoCal Speedshop. It was PC3G. And I never thought I could actually make like a real career out of it. It was just my hobby and a fun thing to do. I never really put myself in that caliber of anybody that could build something of the likes. The transition from PC3G to SoCal Speedshop was the sign hanging on the wall. It was already established, and Pete and Alex became really good friends and decided to, let's carry on the tradition. It was 2015 is when I branched off and left SoCal. I had kind of maxed out. I mean, that's Pete's company. It was probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Got a 1937 Ford truck here. It was started by another guy, and we're finishing it. but it's a 37 Ford truck, but it's utilizing all 36 Ford, coupe, roadster, whatever, front sheet metal, fenders, and it's got a stack injected EFI 302. This one we just took the body off yesterday as the chassis is finally complete. All built in-house, airbagged. We've got it designed so it doesn't actually lay frame. It stays about a ½ an inch off the ground. But small block Ford, AOD auto, 9-inch Ford rear end. It's all on airlift. This car right here is a 1959 Pontiac station wagon. We're actually building this car because he has a boat that's already restored, a 1959 Chiata. So color scheme, motor, everything. It's Pontiac powered. We're building this car so we can tow his boat. Now this is mine. Well, now it's mine. Actually, about 17 years ago, I filmed a TV show that never aired and had a crew of 6 guys. We built this 1968 Charger, all steel, Hemi powered. At the time, 17 years ago, the roll cage, the chassis, suspension, everything was certified to 250. I'm actually gonna put it on the street and drive it around with a parachute and a Hemi and real loud, and I'm gonna have some fun. August 15th, 2006 is when I got into the 200 mile an hour club after burning our motor down. Got the record, had it certified, and then it was a couple hours later at the 200 mile an hour booth there on the Salt. And then Art Charisma inducted me into the 200 mile an hour club. Good thing I had my sunglasses on, because he welcomed me and said all that, and I shook his hand and I turned around and walked away, and I didn't say a word because I was afraid I was gonna cry. It was a pretty rad moment. I tell you what, if it wasn't for my wife, Nikki, this industry is really hard. She's the business smart one when it comes to the books, and the tough side of the business is exactly what she does. So yeah, I love her a lot. I don't know. I would only hope that I've done something positive, made an impression on at least one person to better themselves, continue this heritage of and the love of the cars and our culture and what we do. That's what I'd like to see.